Hello, welcome back to Postcolonial Space. Today I'll briefly talk about two really significant concepts, redistribution and recognition. Now, even though these kind of might sound like two new concepts to you, most of the times when we live in this world, these are the two registers under which we interact with each other. And I will explain that a little more separately. But whenever we think of the world and look around and see uneven distribution of wealth, when we are dealing with issues of why do women get paid less than men, or that the workers should get better paid, or the issues of a living wage, all of these are redistributional issues. And we are thinking in terms of how the general wealth in the world or the general wealth created in a national space is distributed and what are the right ways of distributing that wealth. That's the distributive register. Whenever we are talking about how others see us or how others treat us or how should we treat others or how should we acknowledge others in everyday life, we are talking about recognition. Okay, so these are the two very basic ways of understanding these concepts, but there is more. Now, there's a wonderful book which I highly recommend, and I'll post a link to it, and it's called Redistribution or Recognition. It's a debate between two wonderful philosophers, Nancy Fraser and Axel Honneth. And the debate is about the two concepts, redistribution and recognition. Now, Nancy Fraser is a philosopher of redistribution. She is the one who theorizes and talks about and philosophizes about, within the American context, how is it that in the post-Fordist world, how did the workers fight for better wages? What happens to workers and people when globalization happens? And and so she is the philosopher of redistribution. Axel Honneth, on the other hand, is the philosopher of recognition. His argument basically is that recognition is something that we all seek from the other, from the gaze of the other, or through law, and that everything else can be subsumed under the recognitional register. Now, in this debate, they both write different chapters in the book. Nancy Fraser is talking about kind of a multi-perspective view where we could incorporate redistribution as well as recognition in our dealing with issues of social justice. Axel Honneth, on the other way, argues that recognitional register is so large that economy and others can be subsumed under it. Okay, but it's a good book to read to understand. Let's delve a little deeper into the two registers. So redistribution register or redistributional register is any time when we think of the world in terms of how it works and how the economic resources, the power, and everything else is redistributed. What do I share of the national wealth of a country? How does it get to me? So even in the classical Marxism, the fight between the workers and the capitalists is a fight about redistribution, because the workers want more for their labor, right? And the capitalist wants to extract more labor for less money. So anytime we are making a fight for social justice, we are asking the government to do more for the poor, the government to do more for the weak and the infirm, and developing a safety net. We are working under the redistributional register. Now, it's not just the activists and people on the left. The conservative economists and others also talk about redistribution, only in their way. The government should not be responsible to redistribute wealth, but the private enterprises should be. So their argument on the right is that if we let rich people and corporations keep more money, they will hire more people, and hence wealth will trickle down and be redistributed. But mostly the issues of redistributive justice, even or equal or equitable redistribution of a national wealth or global resources are the issues that fall under the redistributional register. In literary studies, then you can look at a setting, and I mean, some novels can be very obviously political, but you can see how people fare when the redistributional register is upset or is not structured or doesn't have the safety net. I use this information when I teach, let's say, Bushi Yamashita's Joys of Motherhood. Now, why does Nuego's life become so precarious? Even though she works hard, partly because the system in which she is working, there are no protections for the individuals, no safety net. And you can watch the video on Bushi Yamashita. I will put a link in the description below. Coming to the recognition register, Axel Honneth and so many other people argue that the prime mover of us as human beings is our need for recognition, and that we seek that recognition from the other, from our parents, from our friends, from our peers, from people outside in the world. And that means that if that recognition is denied to us, we develop psychological problems, we develop social problems, we turn inward and can become destructive. Now, understanding this is crucial in a certain kind of critical pedagogy. I've already recorded a lecture on Mark Brocker and on his book, Radical Pedagogy, and he talks about that. If we understand how our students' biggest need is to sustain their identities and to defend their identities, then understanding the recognitional register can help us deliver more effective and probably transforming pedagogy. But any time when we talk about I should be included into the mainstream, regardless of what my sexuality is, what my gender is, what my race or ethnicity is, that is me and you fighting under the recognitional register. What we want is recognition as equals of our individual selves, but also of our collective selves. So that's why theorists of recognition argue that this is the most important, all-encompassing register, and that redistributional register can be subsumed under it, because that also become part of the recognitional register of me wanting also to be acknowledged as equal so that I can participate in the economic sphere as equal to others and should not be excluded because of my gender, my ethnicity, my race, my nationality, or my sex. So that's the recognitional register. How to use in teaching. I mean, we are all taught, at least on the left, to use the redistributional register pretty effectively. We talk about the class struggle most of the times. We talk about exploitation. We talk about worker rights, rights to access to the public sphere. But I think a lot of us are not really trained very well to incorporate the recognitional register. Now, we do it imperceptibly anytime we're talking about the rights of the minorities or rights of gay or lesbian people or rights of women. We are working under the recognitional register. But I think we need to further hone it where we also understand that our students in our classes, they are also there with precarious identities, and how do we recognize that? The way I explain the difference between the two registers to my students is I ask them, because most of them work, so I ask them, if your boss calls you and says, hey, look, you're a really good worker, we're not making a lot of profit this year, so I cannot give you a raise. Would you be sympathetic to that? And most students would say, yeah, I will understand. So that means on a redistributional register, given good reason but recognized for their work, they will accept lower wages. On the other hand, if the boss pulls them aside and says, hey, you're not really good for our business, I don't really like you, you need to change your hair color and all, and I don't like the way you stand, now that is a denial of recognition. And most of the times my student would say they will not put up with it. So that's how important the recognitional register is, that we would work at a place where we are treated fairly and we are treated nicely, and where our bosses talk to us even if it pays us less, because we'll be happier there. But we would not like to work at a place where our own self is denied, and even if we work there, the consequences would be harmless to ourselves, and we that might then turn into harm to others around us, especially in the domestic sphere, but that's another topic. So overall, to conclude, these are the two large philosophical registers: redistribution or distribution, and recognition. And most of the times, when we think the world or want to change it, we are thinking in one or the other registers. Now, these two scholars, Nancy Fraser and Axel Honneth, have tried to give us a path through their book to figure out how can we work in which both the registers, if not work together, at least work in concert with each other. And I think you and me as scholars, teachers, professors ought to also keep in mind these two registers when we teach, when we interact with our students, right? And when we try to explain life, the world, and the texts to them. So I hope this brief introduction to these two very significant terms was useful. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments. And if you like the content on postcolonial space, please do subscribe. And as ever, I am thankful to you, and I will see you next time.